Hello guys, welcome to the great guitar build of 2021. So first of all I have to route the Trussrod channel. I am going to use a router, a 6mm bit and a parallel guide. So let's get started. After I set up the router, I marked the position of the Trussrod and started routing. So that's what I call a perfect fit. So now I can move on with marking the nut position and the headstock angle. So then I moved on with marking the middle, because it's always important to have your middle point. And then started to cut out the inlay by hand, using a coping saw, some files and some chisels. After I finished shaping the inlay, I started to mark the outline of it, so I had a perfect fit with the routing. And then I moved on with my DIY Dremel router. Using a 1mm bit, I carved out the cavity for the inlay. I earlier drilled some location points to use some location pins to stop the fretboard from moving while glue up, and I will always be able to find my middle again. So then I moved on with shaping the neck. I started to cut out the contour with my jigsaw. I then moved on with refining the shape of my headstock with the drum center attachment on my drill. Then I moved on with the headstock angle. I used a saw to cut it out roughly, and then to refine the shape I used some planes and a shinto rasp. I then started with the Headstock Coverplate. I sanded it flush and then started to lay out the headstock so I can cut it roughly on my coping saw. Then it was time to glue up the fretboard. My location pins helped very much so the fretboard wouldn't move while glue up. So I just refined the channel where I can adjust the truss rod, and then started to apply some glue and then clamp it down onto the neck blank. After the glue has set, I used some planes to trim the sides of the fretboard to the neck. Using a thickness marking gouge, I set the thickness of my headstock. The final thickness will be about 15mm. So then the most boring part of this build started. I started to radius the fretboard to a 12-inch radius using some radiusing blocks and a hand plane. After I added the radius, I started to drill the holes for the Fretmarkers. and then I applied them using some super glue, and also did it with the inlay. And then it was time to shape the neck. I used my jigsaw to cut it out roughly. And first of all, I made sure that the neck heel was perfectly 90 degrees to its sides, so it would sit perfectly in its neck pocket later on. So then I used some chisels and a shinto rasp to get the final neck shape right, so it feels very smooth in your hand. And then I also added a nice heel block cover out of flint maple, so it would match the top. I then continued with the headstock thickness, so I planed it down to the markings we did earlier. The neck will feel smooth in your hand, but with the volute it feels even smoother. So I used a drum sander and some files to get the shape right and to get it really smooth. I have glued on the headstock cover plate. I started with the binding of it. It was a real pain because the radiuses were kinda tight and I also had some chipping again. To get the seams right, I used some files and chisels and always went back and forth until the fit was perfect. Then it was time to add the fret wire. So I cut them to the rough length and then started to hammer them in. With this tape I'm protecting the fretboard for the next step. Using a level beam I started to level the frets so I will not have any high spots. And then I moved on with a triangular file to crown them again. After I drilled the holes for the tuners, I started with the neck pocket. So I aligned the neck with the body using a laser and then put some blocks onto the guitar to use a bearing on a router so I can follow the contours of the neck. After the neck pocket was done, I moved on with the pickup cavities. So I just used my router again with a ball bearing guide and routed the shape of the pockets. And then it was finally done. So I checked the fit of the neck pocket and it was a perfect fit. This is the end of episode 4. We have finished the neck and sanded the neck and the body down to 320 grit. Now it's time to add some finish and some hardware. And this is what we will do in the next episode. We will see us next time. Goodbye.